Welcome to my channel. This is John Mazzara with Remax Results, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Andrea Romie, and she's going to talk to us about an option for homeowners that aren't quite ready to move yet, but need some additional care. And so I'm going to let her talk, and I'll interject with a question or two. But Andrea is going to run the show here and tell us all about herself and her business. So Andrea, take it from there.
Thanks, John. Yes, thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you and the folks out there on YouTube. My name's Andrea Romie. I own Home Helpers Home Care, based here in Burnsville. We support the surrounding areas of Burnsville, mainly the South Metro, but can also service parts of Minneapolis and St. Paul as well. So I'm a brand new agency in the area, providing in-home and in community care to folks who need support with things like companion care, homemaker services, medication reminders, personal cares, which includes things like bathing, dressing, as well as light housekeeping and homemaker services if you need it. We're passionate about providing customized, compassionate support wherever you call home. And that includes seniors, as well as folks who potentially recently had a surgery and needed support in home, new mothers. We really run the gamut for folks who need support.
That's outstanding. So everybody needs a little help always, and that's nice that there's a resource. And like I like what you said about not being just for seniors. So this is it's a home helper. So it's like you said, anybody that needs the care. Now,
Correct.
if somebody lives and is watching this, let's say in a different suburb that you don't service, there are other companies and affiliates of yours that you could make a referral to. Is that correct?
Sure. Yep. So, our availability is based on my territory as well as caregiver availability. We want to make sure that we have reliable caregivers that are within close proximity to where you live. So, if I can't help you, I've got fellow home helper owners across the Twin Cities area, as well as I've made connections with even competitors of mine who may be able to provide services for you. Our services in some aspects are limited. I have what's called a basic home care license. I am licensed in the state of Minnesota to provide services. But if you need other services that we can't provide or more medically based services, hospice service, for example, I've made some great connections around the Twin Cities, and I'm really happy to connect folks with the right resources.
That's wonderful. So you should be a first call, and then you could be a quarterback, if you will, and then offer what you offer. And if it's not what people need, and if they need something more, you could direct them accordingly. So it's nice to know that you're a resource and willing to help and to share. Your
Yep.
background being in the insurance and the medical industry, I think, is
Hmm.
really a strong reason why somebody should contact you because while you come from the corporate world, you come from the corporate world around this type of business, and
Yep.
therefore you have that knowledge and you're a good networker. That's how we met, and you're always
Yep.
out there making connections and offering to help first. And if compensation comes, it's always second, but as a resource first. So that's that you're a giver. So that's great. Um,
Absolutely.
Tell us about if somebody was to hire you with regards to hours. Like, do I commit to 40 hours a week or do I commit to 2 hours? Or what are my options as a consumer? Because I might have a great need or I might have a little need. Where is your sweet spot and where should, as a consumer, should I look to contact you for what I need?
Sure. We're very flexible, again, based on our caregiver availability. Many of my caregivers support other clients as well. So it's really based on availability. The lower hours may require a higher hourly rate. It's really important that we compensate our caregivers who are there to provide the best care. We're flexible in terms of hours. We can support up to 24-hour care, and we will certainly find the right caregiver to fit your needs. What happens is when someone calls and says they need my services, obviously I speak to them on the phone typically about what they need for themselves or a family member, for example, where they're located, a rough idea of the type of support. And again, make sure that I understand that that's something that our company can support and move forward with. I would schedule an in-home assessment with me. I'd come to your home, meet the client, whether I'm speaking to, for example, a son or daughter of the person who ultimately needs help. I would come in and meet with one or both of those parties. Certainly want to meet with the client that will be supporting moving forward. Like I said, kind of learn about the needs. We can have a conversation around what hours might be necessary to support those needs. In some cases, this is new to folks, so I'm going to advise you based on my experience, what type of support and how often, how long that support might need. From there, we'll come up with a care plan and set our rates, and then I'll be looking at my pool of caregivers and see what is the best fit based on that schedule, the type of support they need, the proximity again of my caregivers and their ability to come service. And then from there, we'd start service based on the care plan that's been developed. That might change over time too. So, we can start with a certain amount of hours. And if we find that, potentially that's not enough, or the type of care changes, we need maybe more support, especially with a long-term client. We work through that over time. My caregivers are in the home and will help to keep me updated via an app and good communication between the two of us, as well as I'll stay connected with the clients and any guardians or parties that I communicate as well on those needs. And we're happy to be flexible if that changes over time.
It's wonderful. And I know like maybe a concern would be I could, put an ad in the paper and maybe hire somebody and I have no idea who's
Mhm.
walking in the door or what their intentions are. Whereas with an organization like yours, why don't you tell everybody how a client or a caregiver is vetted so they can feel comfortable introducing a new person to their loved one. So tell us about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, sometimes find caregivers or seek caregivers who are sort of independent caregivers for care for their loved ones. When you contact an agency like myself, you'll know that one, I'm licensed to provide these services. I've gone through the state of Minnesota to get my license, and they oversee that care on an ongoing basis. My caregivers have to be trained based on what the state of Minnesota says, as well as what I, as an owner, want to orient my caregivers in providing the best service. So we start at what the state says that we need to have, and then I also have my own orientation about my company, my expectations, an emphasis on communication and respect. So those caregivers are trained. They're also background checked. So that's through the state of Minnesota, through the Department of Health. So many of my caregivers have gone through that process, and it's rechecked when I go through the background process when I'm hiring them. They've been fingerprinted in the past as well. So that gives you the assurance that the folks that I'm bringing on are both trained and background checked. We as a company are licensed and insured in case anything happens in the home. That's not typical for individual caregivers, who are providing the care and are not licensed themselves or insured themselves. So that's a really important piece. It's a protection for my clients. It's a protection for myself and my caregivers as well. So that's really, that when you're coming to home helpers, we've gone through the process to make sure that, the company is stable, insured, and licensed, as well as my caregivers.
That's outstanding. I wouldn't want it any other way. I happen to know some people that were caregivers that ended up getting themselves in lots of personal trouble, and I would never want them to be associated with my family. And it sounds like if they had applied as an applicant to work for your company, they would have been knocked out of the box right off the
Sure.
bat. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic. So safety for an older, frail person, of course, is of extreme importance. Getting robbed, or taken advantage of because of a mental deficit, would be a concern. And it's nice to know
absolutely.
that there's checks and balances and there's protection. I mean, not that you want to utilize an insurance claim, but there's something behind it other than, oh, I'm sorry. There's actually
Mhm.
something substantial, and the state requires it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's worth the extra cost differential between an
Mm,
unlicensed and licensed agency. At least it would be for me to have that peace of mind. Um,
sure.
what else would you like to tell our audience about you, your company, the industry, when they should utilize you? What else would you like to share with us?
Sure. I got into this business because I was really passionate about offering a needed and good service to my community. I live in Savage, right in the area that I service. I've been in the corporate world in my career up until recently and decided it was the time to take the leap into business ownership. But it was really important to me, again, to be service based, to be community based. And I think that this type of company has really been a great fit for me. Also, with my business and operations background, running this type of business, there's some folks who get into it because potentially they have a medical or caregiver background, or potentially, they already have connections in the community. But my background in operations, hoping to provide a really good service to my clients, and that means also speaking to using an agency. If there is a caregiver who's unable to work a shift because they are going on vacation or they've become sick, I'll have the operations in place to hopefully still be able to service that client based on the staff that I have and the processes that I have in place to make sure that we have kind of a well-oiled machine. So that was important to me that my skills and background are an advantage to the company that I'm running as well. In addition to, like I said, being very passionate about providing this type of service to my community. I would also say, and this was something that I didn't even know before learning more about this industry, is that we certainly are home based and certainly want to support people in their homes. But we like to say wherever you call home. If there's someone who potentially has entered a community, they're living in a community, and most communities these days have different sort of levels of care. So, for example, someone could move into independent living, and those fees go up significantly once you go to kind of that next level of assisted living. In some cases, it makes sense for you to call home helpers and say, I need a little bit more support in independent living. I'm not quite ready for that assisted living, but I do need some support. And we typically can come into those facilities. I have developed relationships with many around my territory, many communities and facilities around my territory, and will continue to do that in the community. And most facilities are very much welcome those folks to come in, especially knowing, like we talked about, with an agency, these are folks who have been background checked and trained, and they're comfortable with us coming in and supportive of them helping their community members and tenants. So, like I said, we are home helpers, home care, but that might not be the traditional home that you're thinking of as well. So that's something to think about. If you or you have a loved one who's in that sort of situation, that's a good option as well.
Yep, I'm really glad you brought that up. I have a relative that's in a memory care facility, and it's about 16,000 a month, and it's a lovely, lovely property. However, they can't be with that individual on a 24/7 basis, and they've actually spoken to the family about hiring somebody to augment what the facility is able to offer. The facility
Yeah,
has their employees, which have to service all of their clients in the memory facility, and they
exactly.
can't sit for 3 hours with somebody. So adding on an extra, a service like yours to come in and do that would provide again an enhancement to the life of that individual if it can be afforded. So, but and from from a
Absolutely.
personal standpoint, that discussion is just begun. So
Mhm.
that's so I'm glad you brought up the fact that home is where you are, meaning a facility, a memory care facility, an assisted living facility, your house,
Yep.
of course, and I've had people I sell real estate all throughout the Twin Cities, and I've had people say to me, "I'm not going out till they take me out in a box." I'm never selling the home. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Well, as long as you're going to stay in that house until they take you out that way, you might as well get the care and help that you need because you're not going to go from 100% to passing away, you're going to decline. And during that decline, a service like yours could make and allow for somebody to stay in that house safely. And that's the whole thing. And we got winter
Absolutely.
right now. We're in the middle of it when I'm recording this video. And an older person needs to be really careful. Even a younger person like me, I wiped out the other day on the ice. So luckily, I was able to get back up. But anyway, that's something, a service like yours is necessary. And for those that
Absolutely.
can afford it, and it's not that expensive either, by the way. I don't know, we won't talk prices, but because it depends on the level of care. But let's just say that after our meeting and looking at the costs, it certainly is not as expensive as one might think for the
Hmm.
level of service and care and the value add to their loved one. I think because you can do limited blocks or more, you can get
Hmm.
that little extra touch for not much money. And if you're watching this and you have a parent and you're trying to improve their life at the end of life and they've got the money, I think adding on services like this are something you might want to consider. Um, Anything
Absolutely.
else,
Yeah,
Andrea, that you'd like to share?
no, I was just going to mention too that, I had two grandparents that passed away within the last year, and they had, different experiences in terms of getting older and the type of living situation that they needed to be in. One of my grandparents had support in a great plan in place well in advance, and was in a relatively good situation as she aged. My other grandparent, he was one of those that said that he didn't want to leave his home, and unfortunately, he was in an area that really didn't have services like mine. And I hope honestly one day to be able to expand to some more rural communities because it's really needed there. As long as we can find the care and the caregivers in those areas. So I've seen both of those situations, and I'd love to be part of helping an older person age in their homes if that's where they want to stay, and really supported with the right caregivers. My parents are all the way in Arizona, so trying to remotely support parents across the country is really difficult. And I wish that there was a service like mine in the area where my grandpa was, because it was challenging to find the right kind of care. Like I said, that I've seen it, and happy to provide this in my community. And always feel free if you're kind of wavering or just have questions about the service or what it might look like. I am happy to talk to you, and we can walk through your questions, even if you're kind of at the beginning of your research for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for offering to be a resource for the community. Can you share how so, and I'm going to put this all in the body of the below the video, but can you
Yep.
tell us verbally how to contact you with regards to phone and email and website, please?
Yep. Absolutely. So easy to Google me, Home Helpers Home Care of Burnsville, or you can go directly to my website. It's homehelpershomecare.com/Burnsville MN. And like I mentioned, there are a couple different owners, but particularly if you're in the South Metro, look for me, Home Helpers Home Care of Burnsville. My direct number is 612-655-6041. Feel free to call me at any time. My email address is Romie, ROMIE, at homehelpershomecare.com. Happy to talk with you through any of those means. On my website, you can also submit your contact information and I can give you a call back as well.
Outstanding. Well, you've been very responsive and when we've been meeting, and I know you'll get back to people. So that's great. So I'm going to put all of your contact information in the body again below the video. Feel free to
Okay.
reach out to Andrea, and she'd love to help. In the event that you eventually need to sell your home, of course, I'd love to help you with that. So with that, have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.
Thanks so much, John.
You betcha.